that's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Matotso Pogo. All right. Matotso Pogo. Lo na inzo rata. Give me 1 second. We are all right, and we are live too on Instagram. Biba Biba Biba. All right. All right. Mangaigi hidgi airi. Hungan. Biba Biba Biba. All right. Half a day. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure that we are streaming on all channels. Na idzo unrato. Okay. Yep. And again, we are on YouTube. We are on Instagram.
The live stream? Yeah. Oh, I never tried that. What's on the layout and everything?
It's an hour straight option.
Oh, just put the flyer to that.
Oh,
Yeah, just put the financial flyer, then we get on the screen.
Okay. All right.
The page.
Good. We are live. We are live. Okay. Right. Half a day. Todos hamzu gwena hudzong. Estige nuevo na episode Fanatsu. Half a day. Wai host midzu tatlu si Michael Luhan Bavakwa. And today, for this episode of Fanatsu, we're talking about an upcoming museum exhibit. And some of you might remember a few years ago at the Guam Museum, we did an exhibit called Fanohge Chamoru. I'm going to share with you real quickly some images from that exhibit. It was a beautiful exhibit. Fanohge Chamoru. It was done by Dr. Kevin Escudero, Guampedia. Nega Mangiesticia. I'm looking for, I have too many windows open. Tisinho Husoda. It was a beautiful exhibit that chronicled the movement for self-determination, decolonization, but there were some of us, including myself, who felt like it needed a part two. It needed a little bit more, added onto it, right? Because this movement for self-determination, this movement for decolonization is something that Chamorro people, depending on your understanding of history, we've been pushing for this, you could argue, since Magellan, since San Vittoris, since Captain Henry Glass, since the Organic Act, since Robert Underwood went to the United Nations, since Angel Santos, depending on how you view history, it's something that has been ongoing for a very long time. And so, with that in mind, what we want to talk about in terms of Fanohge Chamorro, decolonization, this movement is not just the concepts involved, right? Because it's easy to think about decolonization as just political status options. It's easy to think about it in terms of plebiscite. These are important sort of things, right? But one of the things that I like to think about it too is the community groups, the individuals, the figures who have pushed for this, not just recently, but even those figures who pushed for it, because nowadays you can go down to the Chamorro Village night market and you can say, I believe in an independent Guahan, and chances are good there's some people who say, Biba, Guahu Lokwi. There might be some people who say, I don't like that Tizahuano. I think statehood is cool. And there might be, your fancy cousin who's like, free association sounds very logical to me. I like the cut of free association's jib. But 50 years ago, if you went down to, well, there was no Chamorro Village night market. Let's say you went down to like the farmer's market and you said, I like independence for Guam. Oh my goodness, somebody would have called Archbishop Flores on you and said, somebody exorcised the demon in that boy. If you went down and said, I think statehood is where we should go, people would have said, what are you, crazy? We're not good enough to be a state of the United States. We should just be happy for what we have. Shut up. Shut up and just wave the flag on Liberation Day like a good Chamorro. And if you said free association, they would say, hey, you already have a common law. That's enough. You already freely associate with somebody. What is that? What is that? You're already living in sin. People wouldn't even know what free association was as a political status option. But when we look at where we are now, the conversation has changed. And a lot of that is because of the work that people have done. And so these are the images from the last exhibit that happened at the Guam Museum. It was opened a few years ago, right after COVID. Oh my goodness, look at the masks that everyone is wearing. We were so middle-aged or young. We were so young or so middle-aged at the hint. But you can see it's a beautiful exhibit. You can see here a timeline that talked about some of the history of political status change, some of the major milestones, right? There's Dr. Laura Sauder, Dr. Samuel Betances there. And there's, of course, the Imagahagan Guahan, Lulian Guerrero there. This is for the opening for the exhibit. And of course, I think we know who this Estina Tautaguini, we know who that is there. There's Melvin Wampat Borja with Dr. Kevin Escudero there for the opening. Angela Santos and Sandy Flores, now Sandy Flores Moylan. And so the exhibit took broad strokes looking at this, looking at these issues of political status. But one of the things the Commission on Decolonization supported this. The museum was very proud to host this exhibit. But one of the things, though, is that, and one of the feedback that we heard from the community is that it didn't have a lot of the community emphasis, is that political status was something, political status change, political status advocacy was definitely something that at different points was a top-down endeavor. Elected leaders, governors pushed for, but there was major moments where community groups, people were protesting, students, veterans, people on the ground were making things happen. And so one of the things that this upcoming exhibit that we want to do in that is really get at that community aspect for that. And so I have with me here part of the crew that is forming this, the Commission on Decolonization, the office over there, and oh my goodness, the camera is just focusing in. Okay, the camera is doing strange AI things over there right now. So good thing the camera is on me. Hold on. But okay, so before I'm going to hand it off to the Commission on Decolonization crew in a second. But first, what we are gathered for here today is a call for decolonization exhibit donations. Next year, early next year, it's targeted for Mes Chamorro 2026. The Commission on Decolonization in the Guam Museum will be having an exhibit. And the focus, as I said, is on this movement for decolonization. And the things that we are looking for. Oh, there, I see that you're all ready. Okay. And some of the things that we are looking for, I'm going to pass it off to you now so you can talk about some of the things that we're looking for. Okay. So let me hand it off now to our COD crew here. All right. And so, Melvin, why don't you guys introduce yourself, because the Commission on Decolonization, there are some people, of course, who say that COD doesn't do very much and is a waste of money. But when you think about how this is an office of just 3 people, but how much they do in terms of public education, public outreach, definitely punching up above their weight class. And so, Melvin, why don't you introduce your crew there and then talk about this exhibit that's coming up?
All right, Hafide everyone. Guasi Melvin Wampat Borja, the Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization. This is Harmony Palaganas, and this is Byron Uggan, and this is the whole crew. But like you said, we're a very small operation with a huge mandate to educate the entire island, raise awareness about Guam's political status currently as an unincorporated territory, and what are the legitimate political status options for Guam that would meet the criteria of being a fully self-governing status. As some of you may know, we manage the work of three status task forces. One is, of course, is the Independence Task Force, the other for free association, and the other for statehood. The status task forces are built to advocate for their particular status, whereas we are built to basically challenge the status quo, challenge our current status, highlight our right to self-determination and decolonization, and keep our process in line with the international standard for decolonization. So part of what we do on a regular is produce educational information and then disseminate it to the community. We've run a lot of outreach throughout the week. These guys just did some outreach yesterday. We have a full slate on, every week there's some kind of outreach engagement. But part of that also is to do other community outreach through community-based events. And so the exhibit idea, it's kind of been floating around for a while. I think the biggest challenge for us is that we're a small team, and an exhibit is a huge undertaking. But thankfully, the climate at the Department of Chamorro Affairs and the Guam Museum is very supportive of Chamorro self-determination and decolonization. So as you know, our curator at the Guam Museum is a longtime advocate for Chamorro self-determination. So it helps to have a curator that is passionate about these issues, kind of leading the charge for the Guam Museum. So we requested of our board approval to make this investment in an exhibition so that we could use it as a tool for further community engagement. What we really liked about the last exhibit, the Fanohge exhibit, was that it became kind of a centralized place for community discussion around decolonization and self-determination. We had our crew out throughout the run of the exhibit, distributing our educational materials and engaging with visitors who came to see the exhibit. But I think one of the things that really excites us about the prospect of a new exhibit or a continuation of the Fanohge exhibit is that our goal really is to try to humanize the exhibit. One of the challenges, I think, is that Guam has existed for so long in this inequitable colonial space that it's kind of just become the norm for a lot of us. A lot of people on Guam just blanket accept that, things are just more expensive on Guam. That's just what it is because Guam is far away. A lot of us don't bother to dig deeper into that and understand the way that our political status contributes to a lot of the challenges that we face in our day-to-day lives. And that's been a big focus for our team, is to help people to make these connections to political status and understand that the root of a lot of the challenges they face as individuals and that we face collectively as a community are somehow tied to our current political status, and there's a resolution through a change in political status for all of these issues. Now, granted, of course, each of the political status options is different. Each one provides a different mechanism or resolution to the challenges that we face. But I think the kind of common thread throughout, right, is that it puts us as a people, as a government, in a position to be the change that we wish to see and to exercise a certain level of sovereignty that allows us to create solutions that are right for us. I think that that's a big, kind of big misnomer, right, about our current status. We believe that we're US citizens and that we operate within the US framework of democracy. But, we are undeniably under the plenary power of Congress. We're unilaterally controlled by the federal government. And so in a lot of instances, we're using these kind of cookie cutter solutions that may be relevant and applicable in the continental US, but may not be here in Guam. And so, that's the ultimate flaw, right, of being a non-self-governing territory is that, we have this illusion of self-government, and we are self-governing to a degree, but because we're not fully self-governing, it really puts a lot of limitations on us and our ability to resolve the challenges that we face. So what we like about the prospect of the exhibit is this opportunity to connect people to their past, in a very personal way. One of the focuses for the exhibit is kind of the who's who in this struggle. And a lot of the interesting thing is that there's a lot of champions for Chamoru self-determination and decolonization throughout the generations that still have families here in Guam, still have people that remember that struggle, remember their work, remember their legacy, and the place of this issue within their legacies. So it's for a lot of people, the honoring of their ancestor, their family member is, it's an important thing for them, right? I think that's it's kind of common in our culture, right? Is that we want our families to be recognized. We take pride when our families are honored, and so we're really looking for that to tap in that way and to get connected with our community in that way to kind of breathe new life into a life that was lived for this effort. So it's a really exciting thing for us. You mentioned earlier that the community effort was so important in the decolonization conversation. I would argue that this office, as small as it is, it's a huge victory for the people of Guam, because the Commission on Decolonization is a physical manifestation of the desires of our community, right? It went through in 1997. It went through the legislative process. The bill was introduced by then Senator Hope Crisol, and it passed muster, right? Had a public hearing, that was adopted into law, and eventually the legislature appropriated funds in order to stand up the operation. And though we're still a very modest operation, nonetheless, this is what our people desired at that time. Our people wanted deliberate action, tangible action taken on advancing the cause of self-determination and decolonization. And this is even the reimagining of our predecessors, which was the Commission on Self-Determination, which was playing the lead during the Commonwealth Draft Act era, and then their predecessor, the Political Status Coordinating Commission, right? Just kind of like the first iteration of this government work. But if you look at the Commission on Decolonization and our mandate and the way that we have evolved beyond the Commonwealth era, a lot of what you see in the framework of the Commission on Decolonization is a direct reflection of the international standard for decolonization, because at that time, our people at the community was engaging the United Nations, right? That was primarily led by OPIR, the Organization for People's Indigenous Rights. A lot of the movers and shakers from that era and that group, a lot of like Senator Ron Rivera, former Senator Hope Cristobal, Ron Tehan, former Congressman Dr. Robert Underwood, William Hernandez, Aldazama. There's a lot of folks that were involved in OPIR. And OPIR really kind of kicked the door open to the United Nations, because we were kind of moving in circles with the federal government, right? They say, oh, we support this, but then there's an unworkable framework that's imposed upon us. And when we found the mechanisms in the United Nations, we realized that there's a lot that lines up with our values as an indigenous community in the way that we understand decolonization and self-government. And so I don't think anybody here kind of views the UN as the hero that's going to swoop in and kind of save the day and force the United States to make Guam self-governing. But instead, we view the United Nations as just a prong in our strategy. We still engage with the federal government. We still engage with the Department of Interior. We do our best with the Department of State, even though we're not always welcome there. And we we would love for there to be a lot more deliberate engagement by our delegate to the House of Congress. So, I feel like we still continue to do all of these things, but adding the United Nations into the framework, I think is very important because we have already established over the years that there are a lot of things that we don't see eye to eye with the federal government. And so, we're not just bringing in a random organization that just so happens to be called the United Nations. We're bringing in an organization that represents the global community. And if the rest of the world is on board with this idea, and it's proven, right? There have been a whole lot of countries smaller nations that have decolonized, changed their status, and so we're following that framework, just like we're one of the last 17. So,
So just Melvin, it's a good point because I think for this exhibit and for these donations that we're looking for, a lot of people may forget, that this movement for decolonization has happened in so many places. And you're talking about the United Nations, and that's one of the places where, more than 100 people have gone from Guam to the United Nations, to talk to, and not just the United Nations, but they've gone to tell the story of the Chamorro people, to tell the story of Guam and other places, to represent, to fight for our rights. And we need materials to help tell that story, right? To help people understand that, because for the three of you as part of the Commission on Decolonization Office, you get the brunt of this. People who basically live online, who feel like because they're on Facebook or TikTok all day, and then think that the universe of whatever their feed is everything, and then come and say, well, no one cares about decolonization because I didn't watch a single video about decolonization all day, or no one in my feed cares about this, so nothing has been done about this, and blah, blah, blah. But this is why an exhibit like this is so important. This is why we need these materials so people can see.
I agree that, this is for a lot of people who may not be directly connected, at least now, to this movement. Historically, the movement for Guam's full measure of self-government has been so widely supported that the likelihood of you being connected to a supporter is way higher than you being connected to somebody who was against this. Historically, the issue of self-government and decolonization has always been a bipartisan effort. Even at the legislative level, which is primarily dictated by the will of the two parties, right? The preference of the two parties. Guam is very different than other non-self-governing territories whose preference for decolonization changes when leadership changes. In Guam, it never mattered historically whether we were democratically led by a Democrat administration or a Republican administration, a Democrat majority in the legislature, Republican majority. Both parties have always supported the idea that the people of Guam deserve to govern themselves. And so we really love the idea of, soliciting donations, because it's not just a way to kind of create these physical representations of these different moments throughout our history in pursuit of this challenge and this resolution, but it's also a way to connect people and connect people directly to the movement. Especially if it's somebody, your grandfather or your grandmother was involved in the struggle, and you have something that represents, that moment in their work. Sharing these items, loaning these items to us for exhibition is a great way to get connected to the larger movement. It's a way for people to feel like they're involved, like they're maintaining the legacy of their ancestors. We really want this to be a community-led effort. If you recall, one of the previous exhibits we had over here at the Guam Museum was the Growing Up on Guam exhibit, which you played a major role in assembling. And one of the things that that a lot of people commented on was just the nature in which the exhibit was built, right? That was also done on a community call out. We're asking people to share old photos and memorabilia from a time that is now lost in Guam. And people were really excited to share these things, right? Excited to have them included, have their family included in the recollection of old Guam, right? Growing up in Guam in the 80s, 90s, 70s and such, right? So we look at this in the same way. A lot of the inspiration for this came from the success of that exhibit. People were really thrilled to be included in that effort. So we hope that people are gonna look at this in a similar light. If you have old protest signs, or you're one of those that went to the United Nations, you got a security badge, you want to bring it in, you got Sana Bobby has donated some of the correspondence that she had from former Senator Angel Santos. There's a lot of really great ways that we can capture these moments in history and tell the story again for somebody who wasn't alive at that time.
Biba. We'll get it. Oh, Harmony, go ahead. And then we'll go to Senora Bobby so that he has it. But Harmony, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. I love the conversation going on, but I just wanted to add that the theme for our exhibit is for Guahan by Guahan. So emphasizing that community focus and historically how the efforts for Guam's decolonization have been led by the people of Guam, specifically the Chamorro people. I think one of the goals for the exhibit is also reflecting on that history. How can we use that to empower future generations and our current generation to keep the movement going forward? So I think that's a really powerful part of it. And I just wanted to add, just giving shout out to another member of our team, Haani San Nicholas, who's been kind of taking the lead, taking the charge, and laying like a really strong foundation for this exhibit. And I just wanted to shout her out.
No, Sidzus Mase. And now we're gonna hear from, and I know a number of you are excited to see what Senora Bobby Benavente has to share. And before we get to her real fast, though, I wanted to emphasize what has already been shared, that the exhibit needs all types of submissions. And so signage like banners and posters, but let me tell you this, one of the things that I really, really, really wish that somebody had preserved and put into the museum was a sign that prohibited the speaking of Chamorros from schools. Because those signs, those types of like whites only, no colored signs become hugely important markers in museums across the United States to tell that history. That was enormously influential on the Chamorro people, and those signs were everywhere. And it's so hard to find even pictures of them, and people didn't hold on to them. People were so happy when they went away. And so this is what I'm talking about, is that there are those parts of the history where it's exactly what you think it is. Protest signs, somebody says decolonize this, but telling a story is also the things that creep up on you too. And so even something that tells the history in a negative way or is part of the background, the context, right? Oh, wait. And so I think, well, hold on. Melvin's got like a,
This is
oh yeah, hold it up higher. So Melvin's got oh yeah, the government code. He's got a printout of the government code that banned the Chamorro language.
we keep this in the office as a reminder why it
Mhm.
exists.
Oh yeah, and see, so the movement for decolonization it's those who fought and what they used to fight, but it's also the things that they were fighting against too. So if you have even those types of things that can just help create the moment, help create people understand, right? So like if you have things that show, so protest signs are good, but what were people protesting? It's also good if you can help people understand that too. But signage, banners, posters, photographs, recordings, those are very, very important too. Nowadays, we record everything, but in the past, people didn't record everything. And so if you have some of those in your family, in your organization, it's good. T-shirts. It'd be nice to have some T-shirts, even artwork. Like if you were part of a group that made T-shirts to represent what you stood for or a campaign, having a T-shirt in the exhibit is, it helps people understand more than just the text can, or even just an image can. So that's why these types of donations and loans too. It doesn't have to be donated. You don't have to give it up. You can just loan it for the exhibit, and then you can get it back, or you can just allow us to scan it. But it will really, really go far in terms of helping us communicate sort of this story. And so now I want to pass this off now to Senora Bobby Benevente, who was on Fenatsu a few years ago with the Benevente family when they were talking to Mr. John Kurtz. She helped organize that episode. And so, but I'm very happy that she's here now because she was one of the first people to reach out to offer something to be donated to be used in this. And she also then offered something which was truly unique in terms of this. And so, Senora, I want you to, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself and then talk about, in particular, the letters that you decided to share.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for the invite. All these discussions have triggered so many different emotions, and I'm trying to stay focused on what you've asked me to speak on, although I'm reminded about a time when I was in grade school and the law was put in place where we couldn't speak Chamorro in public. So my family of 12 children, I had 11 siblings, my mom and dad, there was a major shift, but a big confrontation between my parents on what our primary language would be from then on in our home. Dad was a police officer at the time. Mom was a school teacher. Dad says, screw that. We're going to speak tomorrow wherever and whenever we want to. Mom says, no, we got to obey the law. So speak only English from now on. And that argument started because my dad was asking my older brother to go out to the coastline to bring in his police uniforms that were hanging out to dry because the rain clouds were coming on. And as he spoke in Chamorro to my older brother, a year older than me, he didn't understand a word he was saying because we had already shifted to English being the language in our home being spoken. And we were in grade school, maybe, like fifth grade or fourth grade or something. So my dad, when my brother couldn't understand him, my dad started yelling at him. And I'm on the corner of the wall saying, Dad wants you to go get the uniforms off the clothesline. In the meantime, my mom comes in and there was this major argument, and it still sticks with me right now, that Dad says, we'll speak tomorrow. My mom says, no, if he doesn't understand tomorrow, then for God's sakes, speak English. And those words stuck into my head. So anyway, fast forward, I am still struggling with speaking my language fluently, the Chamorro language fluently. And I'm always reflecting back to that. And it's a very painful, emotional thing for me to feel like I failed myself, number one, and then to feel kind of a resentment to how was it that my own family cheated me of the opportunity to love and speak the language that I am so desiring to learn and to be fluent in. So, my husband most of my elder brothers and sisters, Chamorro is the first language, and that's the language they speak when we get together, including that of my husband's. And so I understand everything that's being said, but I respond in English, which is kind of shameful, but that's where that is. That's what you reminded me of, but that's not what I'm here to talk about, right? Thank you for the invite. I met Defunto Anget Santos when he was senator. Didn't really know him well, but kind of followed the things that he was standing up for. I attended his meetings as a senator when he'd come to Dadado village to speak about land issues and trying to help people like me to ensure that we had an understanding of how to get our lands returned from the military, and also to make sure that Gov Guam also was compensating us fairly for land that was taken for road easements and for development, right? So it was then that I met Anget, and then in 2000, when he was imprisoned, I came across a newsletter that was put out by the United Church of Christ, and it had a story about what they were calling out for the release of Angel from prison. And in there was an address. And so have always felt heartbroken that he was incarcerated for something that he believed strongly in, with the return of his grandfather's land. And I wrote to him. I wrote to him to the address on that newsletter, and he wrote back to me in June of 2000. So it was that letter that he wrote, the article that was written by the United Church of Christ, that I submitted for your consideration in exhibiting. Um,
Oh,
anyway,
Senora, I have this letter right here. And
mhm.
would you like to read it, or would you like me to read it, or?
I can read it.
Okay.
And then he also sent a card, which one sentence there has stayed with me for the last 25 plus years. So anyway, the letter, one of the writings he wrote that you've got shown there, it says, Barbara, prison is like a temple or a monastery. It is a place to cleanse the soul and rest the spirit. It is a time to be in the company of our Creator during solitary confinement. At the end of this journey, the spirit of the Honorable Governor Magalahi Ricardo Jerome Bordelio can lay to rest. And my life continues, for there is still much work to be done. Fanohge Chamoru, si Anget. I've kept
Oh, wow.
this letter and card that he wrote to me in June of 2000. I've treasured it. And I've only shared it with you for the upcoming exhibit and one other organization for whom I thought this would help us to stay strong in what it is we're trying to do as a people, for making things right, or for encouraging others to see that there has been harm done to our people, our island, that threatens the future of our children and grandchildren. The one in this card that he also sent with that letter, the one sentence I read often is, Anget wrote, the future of the next generation depends on what we do today. And so I remind myself that every day we have an opportunity as a people, as members of this community, to pay attention to the things that need to be changed or to be improved, so that we have a better life, that we celebrate and stand proud to be Chamoru, and pass on what we can, all the good stuff, to the younger generations.
Oh, si Dios masi, Senora. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I had read it before, and I felt so touched. Gofin affected corazón hunay the first time that I read it, but actually to hear you read it, and then to think about the context, to think more, then to be taken back into the context in which it was written it's the Kelling Todza sitting on. I'm out of words. and
Mhm.
and I have a PhD and quite a lot of student loan debt, so it's rare that I don't have any words. That is, see, this is the type of thing which I think a lot of people will find very, very meaningful. I think before you shared this, before you shared that, I was putting up on the screen here, for people who are a little bit older, middle-aged or older, they might, of course, remember that Angel Santos did go to federal prison. That younger people might think of Angel Santos as somebody who protested, a symbol of Chamorro rights, but he wasn't simply just somebody who protested. Like, he wasn't somebody who simply just protested the way that you might think of protesting nowadays, but he was somebody who trespassed on land that was his family's land that the federal government had taken. He was fighting back along with others to get their lands back that had been taken. He went on hunger strikes. They blocked access to federal properties. National Chamorro camped out. Like, they were a very direct action protest group. And so because of his advocacy, he did go to prison. And so
Yes.
you giving us that insight, you sharing that insight is very powerful, especially for those who may think of Angel Santos as just a bumper sticker on a car, or a silhouette on a t-shirt, or as just a video that gets shared every year and it inspires you. But you don't, the man, the myth becomes more powerful than the man and what he actually struggled with and what he actually sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I had no idea how valuable this connection I had with him when he was in prison via correspondence was going to stick with me, and to see and experience throughout my life. And I'll be 70 next month. And so my awareness about how things were not quite right, witnessing things like 48 years ago being ordered to get off Litekzan when my family and I were camping there. And, there's a process for getting on so-called military owned land, and being ordered after getting permission to camp, being ordered by soldiers holding rifles to clear out because they didn't see us on a list of approved visitors. And it was then 48 years ago, when my eldest daughter was just 2 years old, standing there kind of daring them to arrest me. Because it's like, no, what are you talking about? What do you mean have to get off this property in Litekzan? What do you mean we don't have permission? What do you mean we're not on an approved list? But we were a group of maybe about 15.
mm,
And I was asked by my family to just help pack up and leave. But and the only reason why I agreed to just leave without any resistance was when my husband said to me, think about our daughter. She's standing there looking at you, getting angry. Let's just go. And so it's been that back, 48 years ago, and then 27 years ago, questioning the military's behavior towards my husband. And it got to the point of writing letters to the rear admiral, and then having his office call my home number saying, can I speak with, Mr. So-and-so? And I'm like, he's not home, but I'm here. And they said, no, we don't want to speak to the fisherman's wife. And I'm like, what? But it was all about my questioning during a UOG public administration conference in 1989. I was a student, and we were part of hosting and organizing the conference and the agenda. And it just so happens that that morning, as I was getting ready to go to the Adelup to help set up, my husband had told me that what had happened early that morning in the darkness was a military chopper hovering over his 12-foot boat as he and his fisherman friend were trying to fish off Litekzan, off Taragi, and in that whole area. So a military chopper hovered over their boat, pitch dark, and used some spotlights, kind of like directing them to follow the light and get away from there. Anyway, it was a very frightening experience because they're out in the ocean, it's pitch dark, this huge chopper bigger than their 12-foot fishing boat was over them. And anyway, so I brought that up at the conference that morning. I asked Governor Joseph Ada told him the story about what my husband had shared just that very morning, and asked Governor Ada to address this with the Rear Admiral, with the military. Because he was, Governor Ada was speaking about all the, his keynote, and he was speaking about all the wonderful things that we have to be proud of here on our island, all the progress, blah, blah, blah. And I, with all due respect, asked him, how can we be so pleased with where we're at today? My husband can't fish. We can't fish in our own waters. We're not allowed to speak our own language. It was against the law. We don't own a whole lot of our own land. We can't get it back. And so anyway, long story short, I was made out to be just I misunderstood as a fisherman's wife what was going on out there, that they were responding to a distress signal, which wasn't true. But I think for the exhibit, right, the only reason why I share this is because as we live on our own island and as we struggle to have a good, healthy life in the way that maybe our parents and grandparents, great grandparents lived, of respect and reciprocity and being good stewards of our land, farming it, fishing our waters. That's what I hope to have now, and that's what I hope for the future, for our future generations. And so then that brings us to the topic of how well are we doing with keeping our land and our water safe and protected, right?
No, si dus masi, senora. Those the other articles, the letters that you provided about the incident with fishermen, it's even if even it can be used in the exhibit, but even if not, it can still be included in the archive of the museum too, because it's emblematic of what it's like to live on an island with such a large military presence where we don't have sovereignty, where we don't have sort of where the military has such broad powers even outside of its fences and its footprint. And so, but thank you so much for sharing all of this. This is and for those of you who have been tuning in, for those of you who are watching, you can you may not have letters from Angel Santos, but if you have anything, even if you have newspaper archives where you have collected issues related to this, or collected articles related to this, if you have anything at all. I mean, our first donation, interestingly enough, I'll share it real fast. The first donation that came in literally the day that we put out the announcement for this, it came from author Stephen Lefevre, filmmaker and author Stephen Lefevre, who shared this image from FestPac from 2016. And so, and the the banner could be included in the exhibit, and we've got plenty of banners that have come in and more that are coming in, but also images, if you have images, and so on. And I know that Melvin has a close connection to this banner that was made during FestPac. I don't know if Melvin wants to talk about this banner.
Sure. That was a fun one because, FestPac is traditionally, nobody really says it officially, but it's discouraged. It's discouraged to protest during FestPac, right? That's not what FestPac is supposed to do. It's really supposed to just celebrate, all of these indigenous peoples and their arts, cultural arts. But most of the in context, most of the decolonization movements that are relevant to us come from the Pacific, come from models within the Pacific. Pacific nations all over the world have been victims of colonial rule and influence. And a lot of what we see as, the success stories that are relevant to Guam come out of the Pacific region. And so we knew that it was important to send a message, and a message not just of Guam's decolonization, but solidarity, within Oceania. And so we kind of had to be strategic with how we were going to deliver this message. And so what ended up happening was that, a lot of the FESPAC delegates are activist friends, and so it wasn't hard to find folks who are willing to do the work and to take the action. And so we ended up meeting over at Agata Johnston, where they're housing a lot of the delegates. And we all brought our FESPAC wraps. So that red banner that you see is the pareo that they gave to all the Guam delegates with Joey Certeza. I think that was Joey Certeza's design, right?
I think so, yeah.
And so really beautiful wrap that all the delegates were wearing. But they're pretty large. And so what we ended up doing was we figured, okay, we know we can't just show up with signs, give people signs, but the wraps were being worn. And so we figured, let's just find a way to use the wraps to be the medium for the message. And so we schemed this idea, like if we just get the fat masking tape, then we can just kind of tape it onto the wrap and form the letters. And we could do it so that it's large and visible from the stands. This was taken over at Paseo. And so it was fun because we built the whole thing. A bunch of us got together and we made all the lettering, and we kind of figured out, okay, this is the order, right? We wanted to say decolonize Oceania, free Guam. And so we had to make sure that they're in the right position. Everybody knew where they're supposed to be in line, that they were able to kind of wear the wrap so that it wouldn't be flagged as, oh, you're not allowed to have that during opening ceremony. And so, we knew that we could do this in a way that was not going to be disruptive or disrespectful. And that, yeah, some people might be like, oh, you guys shouldn't be doing this at the ceremony. But that most delegates, this is a lived experience for them. So we knew that the message was going to resonate with a lot of people, and we thought that it was worth the risk. For this one, I remember watching this happen. My family and I were up in the stands because I was supposed to be a delegate, but I turned it down because I had to be with my kids. I didn't want to stay in the dorms. I wanted to stay with my family. So I agreed to just teach workshop and help organize events. And so I wasn't down on the lawn or in the field with the delegation for opening ceremonies. And I was up in the stands. And I just remember it was so beautiful when Guam came out and you could see our people kind of moving and organizing themselves. And then the banner just opened up. And once they came into full form and they got in line, yeah, you could read it so clearly from the top of the stands where I was at Paseo. And so it was cool because there's so many different versions of this image from different points of view throughout the stadium. And it's nice too to talk to, some of the delegates from the other islands who, remember this moment, who commended us for, kind of strategically and tastefully delivering a message that is not always an easy one to receive. But, I think that that's kind of the nature of activism in Guam, right? Is that we toe this really difficult line where some of our elders say, boy, that's not our way. Or that's not, we shouldn't be disrespectful. That's being disrespectful. But at the same time, we have elders who have had their rights trampled on. So is it what's more disrespectful, to not acknowledge the struggles and, the impositions put upon our people, our ancestors, our elders, or to, always kind of be friendly and turn the other cheek, so to speak. So, it's cool to see the way that our generation, like you and I may get our age group, we grew up in that environment where, some of our elders are like Sign of Angel and Nashon, that era of Chamoru's, are just really bold and all about direct action. And we also have others in that same age bracket category that are like, boy, that's, we don't want to be disrespectful. We have to remember the war. We have to be grateful for, all the things, the advancement, development, whatever, right? Or look at how many people we have who in our family that serve in the military. So we don't want to be disrespectful of them. And so I feel like our generation has always kind of walked that fine line. And instead of just saying, okay, well, never mind, let's just not do it, or never mind what they say, let's just do it anyway and just do it however we want to do it. Instead, what we did is we've kind of figured out a way to strategically deliver our message, but not piss off our elders at the same time. And it's a difficult thing. It's a fine line. I think that a lot of I've lost friends over this. People who are just like, man, I can't handle you anymore. It's too much. I don't want to be involved in this. But then others, those relationships have been galvanized because it's become this, kind of fun, exciting thing to figure out, how do we still remain active? How do we still remain deliberate in the spirit of, Angel and others, right? Who have walked this line, like, who have taught us, raised us, educated us, elevated us so that we could do this work. But how do we also, face our family on Sunday at dinner time? So it's, I think it's an exciting thing. And I feel like now these generations that have come after us, it's a totally different landscape for them. And so it's a really exciting time for me now to kind of be the old dude that's like, oh yeah, good job guys. I like this. This is cool. You guys got this TikTok thing going hard. I don't even know what that is, but awesome. It's a real cool thing to kind of see the evolution of what direct action looks like now.
No, absolutely. And I think to your point, one of the things, so this is the Fanohge March for Chamorro self-determination, and of course this banner here that was carried by the Magat Tautau, those who are kind of honored to be sort of the activists that had been in the movement for decades at that point, and then such as Maria Senzon Tihan, wife of Ron Tihan, but also she had been part of OPIR herself, Hope Cristobal, part of OPIR and other groups, BJ Cruz, part of OPIR and other groups, and then Narissa Underwood, part of OPIR, Jill Benavente, part of Nashon, and then Angel
Jr.
Yep, Angel Jr. And so Angel Santos' son. And so they were chosen to carry this banner, to kind of honor those who had gone before. And so one of the things, for everyone who thinks that nothing has been done on decolonization or that this is something that's like new and never been talked about, the decolonization movement has children and grandchildren at this point.
Right.
It has been around so long. It has sciatica. It has prostate exams, the decolonization movement. It should really be switching to a vegan diet at this point, the decolonization movement, because it has been around for that long that we have esteemed elders who have been in it. And so, and then, yeah, and Melvin, Hita and I, we're already like middle-aged in the movement, and now the next generation is coming. And so, but the thing is that this banner, is also being loaned for part of this exhibit too. The banner that was trailed by 2,000 people in 2019. And so, if we got to remember, if we don't tell these stories, why would TikTok tell the young people about this? And so that's why this exhibit is so important. And so if you and your families and if your organizations, whoever you represent, whoever you're connected to, like Melvin was saying earlier, you have a piece. You've got something Your family was up to no good, up to good trouble in one way or another. And if you want to contribute, if you want to offer something for this exhibit or offer something just for the archives of the Guam Museum, you should reach out. You can message me, you can reach out to the Guam Commission on Decolonization, reach out to them on Instagram or their website, contact the museum, 671-989-4455. You can contact Fanatsu if you want to, but you should definitely reach out because, this exhibit is coming next year and it's going to be drawn from whatever the community, provides, whatever the community provides. And so I want to give a chance, I want to give a final chance, just to, Senora Bobby, to you, if you want to share any final words. So while we close, and then to COD, Team COD, I'll give you a final chance as well. So, Senora Bobby, ko guaha ultimo na sinangan mo?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you all for the work that you do and for continuing to provide exhibits and other means for educating us. It takes for me, for example, many times of hearing the same subject to have a better understanding and an expansion of my understanding of what it means to work towards a state of being politically and otherwise for how we want our people to live and other residents of Guam to live in a way that is less intrusive in our rights and all these little bits and pieces of photos and banners and letters help people to see the broader perspective of our individual and community lived experiences. Um, I'm of the generation that you probably wouldn't hear me speak much about things when my grandparents were alive because out of respect for them and my grandfather's service as a retired Navy man, as well as siblings and a daughter who's in the service. It's not about being aggressive towards the individual, but it's about a system, a militarized system that needs to change up because we're not partners on this island. We're still having to ask permission. I'm still having to ask permission to be sponsored by someone in Wisconsin to go on base to enjoy the beaches, I haven't been to Taragi since I was a little girl. Someone take me to Taragi. I want to see it. I want to enjoy it like all the other families from who don't live here in Guam to enjoy as well. But thank you for this. I'm happy to share something so deep and personal. It still brings tears to my eyes and I get emotional and it's really heartfelt words of expression from Angit. You'll see in the exhibit the entire card in which his words are more than what we've read out today. And so please, take it for what it is, a man who stood for the rights of Chamorro people, whose words live today and inspires me as I go back to read it. And I see the spirit of Angit in many of you, the young generation. I'm so proud of you. And while I can't attend every protest or every event, I'm certainly behind you guys all to help where I can. Even my quiet husband.
Si Zeus Masi, Senora Biba, si Zeus Masi, pwede sinangan
Thank
mo.
you.
And to Melvin and Team COD, ultimo na sinangan Midzo, your final thoughts, your final words.
Thank you, Dr. Barako. This is Fossey for having us on to promote the call for this exhibit. And it's, quite emotional for me hearing Senora Benaventi as well. And I really appreciate the words because as we've all talked about, this movement has lasted for decades and has had a lot of giants embrace the call. And as an organization, we are working towards the promotion of course, the effort to resolve our political status, because this is benefiting not only our current generations, but the future. So I think for me, this idea of the exhibit will provide tangible connections for our community, right? The families that are behind this movement. And I hope that another part of the exhibit's kind of deliverable is to promote further action to keep pushing the envelope further to resolve this long-standing issue. So yeah, as Dr. Bravacqua mentioned, the call out initially went out on our social media pages. We're glad to promote it further on today's episode. So yeah, please feel free to get in touch with us at our office. 671-475-9545 is our telephone number. Guam COD at guam.gov is our email address. And of course, we'll be more than happy to help receive and expand the inventory of the exhibit as we develop it for early next year to release it. So thank you so much.
Suzus Masi Miguel for having us. Suzus Masi Sana Bobby for being guests with us, and of course your generous donation. And I think that as much as we recognize that the kind of inception of this idea was to really highlight the movers and shakers of the past, you know, our elders who paved the way for us. But I think the other part of it is that we all have a place in this struggle. Everybody is needed in this struggle, and I think it's an awesome way for, you know, this younger generation to kind of make the connection of longevity to their past and how they got here, but also to kind of make their mark on the movement, you know, and be a part of the movement. So I think it's an exciting thing for our young people to, you know, to connect with someone or something that's real, you know, that allows people like Angel Santos or, you know, Uncle Ed Beneventi to be more than just a story, you know, or somebody that they've heard about, but to make an actual connection to people who knew them. I mean, this is kind of the beautiful thing of this moment, right? Is that there's still real live connections to these stories and these histories that we can tap into that are just right at our fingertips. And that's what we're hoping the exhibit will do, is to bring these people together, bring these generations together, because that's our way. You know, that's the Chamoru way for us, is to, you know, have intergenerational connections that allow us to maintain and sustain these values that are so important to us. So I really look forward to meeting the young folks that are tapped in and really excited about this. I look forward to connecting with our elders that are still around, that have helped raise me and others like me. I think it's a really exciting moment for us.
Biba. Ayade, biba. Sejus Masi put Hamzu Torus put Ifanatun Midzu Parestin episode Estige Ifanapu. This is the end of this Fanatsu episode, and I'm looking forward. I'm super excited for this exhibit. I'm super excited for, you know, any chance to document and chronicle the decolonization conversation, to take it to the next level. Gof magofzu. Estiha Sejus Masi no Hamzu Torus Ajos Esteki Manatli Hitatlu Esta.